HMLTD, The Worm album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this latest album from UK-based art punk and post-punk band HMLTD, who since their inception, quite frankly, have blown my freaking mind and have become one of my favorite acts in these genres. I mean, many years ago, I caught wind of their music on their debut EP, the Hate Music Last Time Delete EP. I mean, this thing was a post-punk and art-punk album at heart, but it also had numerous nods to glam rock, electronic, gothic rock, some trap, and more. It was lavish, over the top, and completely overflowing with personality, which are all things that I just demand in modern post and art punk. They were off to a hell of a start, and I was so excited to hear their debut album, this bad boy over here, West of Eden, and when it came out, I could not have been happier with the product that we got. They are also one of the few bands that have ever reached out to me thanking me for a review. HMLTD. You guys rock, but the album itself, to me, was everything that I wanted in art punk and post-punk the year that it came out. It was seemingly all over the place stylistically, personalities were there, eccentric performances, the production was great. My only slight issue at the end of the day was I thought they were capable of doing a more, I don't know, a narrative-driven album or a bigger picture album. And leading up to the album that we have gotten here with The Worm, they've dropped some singles, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, at the time, I didn't know what to think of them. My only thoughts were, I kind of need to hear this in the full album. This thing is batshit insane. Early on in the album, you get tracks like The End Is Now, and this is the ticket. This is easily one of the best tracks on here. This is a lavish, artsy punk tune fueled by big personalities and a lavish atmosphere. A healthy dose of glam as well, which is something they've toyed with for years. I'm not too shocked. And there is a ton going on here. The backing vocals, that's a huge part of this album. I think it adds a lot of depth to it. The strum drift and the elegant pianos also do a great job of fleshing this track out a little bit. This is everything that I could have asked for. The passion is also here in spades, and like I alluded to, this narrative on this album is just out of control. But moments like this make me so happy and make everything on this album just very easy to bring in. On the other hand, Days is a more stripped down ballad. It's also probably one of the most human things I've ever heard from HMLTD. This track tackles a lot of different sounds. It is very rustic and old school sounding as far as the instrumental goes, but between the subject matter and the synths that drift in and out, we also have a very strong dystopian vibe. But it adds so much to an album that already has a lot going on, and as far as a ballad goes from HMLTD, I'm really impressed with the passion here. The depth of this band is pretty wild, and by the end of this track, I'm actually in tears of just how beautiful it is. Then we have Strangest Worm Ever, and honestly, this thing takes this entire album to a whole new level of weird. It's breezy, it's elegant, it's also hypnotic, no thanks to the repeated mantra of power gets you high. But I love hearing the solos on this track, the vocal performances, which are all very over the top. This is gravy. It's fluid, it's jazzy, but not for a single second does it lose its passion. And it makes this album come together. And you know, I really haven't dove very deep into the narrative and the story behind this album, mostly because I don't want to. I think that it's personally, you know, sitting through it myself, I think it's something that the listener should kind of, you know, go through on their own the first time, but let me tell you, buckle up, because it's far out. Yeah, in many different ways, this most certainly is a rock opera, and that is not a bad thing. It's actually really fun and really compelling. And Liverpool Street is a completely different animal. Here, once again, we get a much more downtrodden track that is just oozing with emotion. It's far from the glamorous art rock we heard earlier. This is a more standard, traditional, but really emotional orchestral piece. Once again, their sincerity and dedication to this album and its narrative make everything come together. The drama, the spectacle, it's all great. This is certainly a bizarre, really intense and hard to follow album at times from HMLTD, but I am very impressed with their passion, their dedication, and most importantly, just how easy they make it to take in. But I am going to be real with y'all. If there's one part of this album that I do think needed some, extra, gussying up a little bit more tender love and care, if you will, it would be this album's opening 2 tracks. The intro to this album, I actually think that it's pretty weak. Like Worm's Dream that starts this album off. This track easily could have been fleshed out more. It really doesn't add anything at all. Even from the narrative standpoint, it's easily one of the weakest moments. And gonna be real with y'all, I think Wormlands, I think it's the worst track here. I wasn't that impressed with it as a single, and hearing it in the full album, I think that there's just so much better material here. It's one of the very few moments that I've ever looked at HMLTD and just said, wow, that's a little much. And I mean that, and all around, honestly. I mean, narrative-wise, I feel like this is the equivalent of throwing us into the deep end. Like, it just goes from 0 to 100 really fast, and not in an exciting way. It's just kind of annoying. And listen, this album's only 9 tracks long. This, easily could have been, fleshed out into, maybe 1 or even 2 tracks. I would not have minded that at all. But outside of that, we got clashing genres and instrumentals that just sound like they're just too much. I don't know. I just feel like this is way too heady of a track, and it's one of the only times I've ever thought that from the band. Thankfully, though, the rest of this album is pretty awesome. If anything, HMLTD are completely fearless. Take, for example, The Worm. I mean, I'm probably not going to be the only one to say it, but I'm certainly getting Pink Floyd's The Walls vibes throughout this entire album. But I love that. I love the drama. I love the storytelling, no matter how ridiculous it gets. You just need to realize that if you were a big fan of West of Eden and want more of that sound, you're not going to get it on this album. This is far from the throttling post-punk and art punk of that album. This is a completely different breed. This is a theatrical stage show of art punk and glam punk and so much more. And if that's not for you, this album may not be for you. But I can't just help getting drawn into all of this. The over-the-top personalities, the eccentric performances, the drama, the storytelling, the backing vocals, the visual lyrics. It is great. And Path's Life, Sinnerman's song, towards the end of the album, once again, winds things down. This is another emotional, sort of slower ballad. You can't say that this album doesn't have heart. But it quickly does speed up into almost a ragtime-inspired track, but at this point in the album, I'm not really asking questions, I'm just kind of going with it. I mean, this album is a damn production. There is so much crammed into this album. And this track is, it's not an easy listen. It's over 7 minutes long. But it's classy and grandiose just as much as it is eclectic and freakish. It works, and by the end of this spectacle, I want to listen to it again. And the spoken word finale, it's actually gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. And I initially thought that this would have been a great finale to the album and just a decent place to stop, but Lay Me Down offers a nice little sort of epilogue. It's tender, it's heartfelt, but it still clings onto that narrative. It still has a piece of this puzzle to it. And by the end of this track, it's just so impassioned that it comes off as almost like a mission statement for the band and the album. I had my reservations on this album. I really did. And listening to the singles leading up to this thing, I had my worries if they could pull an album like this off. I was very iffy on what I was hearing at the time, but if you want to hear HMLTD, one of the most exciting art punk and post-punk and glam rock and about 10 other genre bands out there, you're going to want to hear this. You're not going to, hear another West of Eden here. You're not going to do that. This is a rock opera, a art punk rock opera filled with a batshit insane narrative, visually drawn lyrics, eccentric personalities, and so much more. But the heart is here. The passion is here. And their dedication to this as a project is a spectacle. There's some moments that I wish I was still listening to West of Eden. I could have used maybe 2 more tracks. And the intro to this album, I felt like it could have been gussied up a little bit, but that's just me. This is still a great album, and you should definitely check it out. I'm feeling a decent 8 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.